On January 3rd, 2023, TMZ obtained and released some body cam footage from a police officer in Indiana who had pulled over Bryan Kohberger, suspect in the University of Idaho quadruple murder of Kelly Gonsalves, Maddie Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. The body cam footage shows a December 15th, 2022 traffic stop where Bryan Kohberger is pulled over with his father in the passenger seat of the car. Kohberger is driving his white Hyundai Elantra, and again, this is on December 15th, 2022. Let me remind you that the press release informing authorities and the public across the nation to be on the lookout for a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra came out on December 7th, 2022, 8 days before this traffic stop. During the course of the exchange between the police officer and Kohberger and his father, it is explained that Kohberger had just been pulled over a little earlier that day by some kind of an SUV. And during the course of the discussion, the police officer comes to the determination that it must have been a county sheriff. He ends up telling Kohberger and his father that, well, since you were already pulled over, I'm not going to give you a warning or a ticket, but, you just have to keep speed safety in mind, and he allows them to go. My initial impression of this exchange and this traffic stop was, oh my God, how many times did authorities have Kohberger right in their hot little hands only to release him back to the public for another 2 weeks where he could possibly harm other people? Based on the comments, your comments that I read to the video I had posted, I'm definitely changing the way that I'm looking at this traffic stop a little bit, or at least I'm allowing for different possibilities. Could it be the case that these traffic stops were the result of a continued surveillance of Bryan Kohberger and his family members? Remember that we know DNA was found at the scene, and it was through family genetics, familial DNA testing, that authorities were able to zero in on Kohberger. So it's believed that we will find out for sure when the probable cause affidavit is unsealed. Lots of people have been asking questions about the probable cause affidavit and its release. If you haven't yet, watch the video I put out yesterday about the probable cause affidavit. The link is up there in the cards right now. Could it be the case that this whole time, since the early stages of the investigation, authorities were just playing a game of cat and mouse with Kohberger? We only know it's been confirmed by authorities that the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police were surveilling Bryan Kohberger for 4 days prior to his December 30th, 2022 arrest. So that means from December 26th to December 30th, we know that Bryan Kohberger was under FBI and state surveillance. Authorities have yet to say anything about days preceding the 4 days leading up to Kohberger's arrest. So again, the question remains, or the question expands, could these traffic stops just have been some antics in a game of cat and mouse that authorities were playing with Kohberger? This interview with a former FBI profiler gives some insight into what may be going on here in this interplay of interactions with Kohberger and the authorities.
Watching and waiting for the right moment to nab an alleged killer. For several days, reports say an FBI surveillance team followed Bryan Kohberger as he was traveling 2,500 miles across the country to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. And during that time, they knew who their suspect was. They just couldn't move in on him right away. But were they really just watching him, or was there more to it? Were they collecting evidence as he was traveling the country? Were they watching his patterns of behavior to plan their takedown? I want to bring in two people who know a lot about this kind of surveillance. Tracy Welder is a former FBI and CIA agent, and Mike King is a former detective and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast. His book is called Deceived. Welcome to both of you. Mike, I want to start with you. On the last segment, we left off at finding the family members through the DNA that might have been found at the scene, right? They say there's DNA found at the scene that they think is the murderers as opposed to all the partygoers. And then they go through the databases and they find all the family members. What comes next, Mike? How do you go through the family members to figure out which one is the one you're looking for?
You have to start isolating. And so you hope that there are other forms of evidence that are driving the investigation and that they're collaborating and corroborating with each other. I suspect that law enforcement was looking at this individual for some time, waiting for that DNA to come back. We heard the chief multiple times saying, we're waiting on forensics. But once he hit the road, and that whole thing has just got you scratching your head about the timing of that, of why he didn't fly home, why does dad fly out and meet him and they go together? But the question becomes, did law enforcement follow him from the moment he left Pullman? Or when he was pulled over in Indiana, did people figure out, holy cow, this guy in this white Elantra is heading eastbound? And that's when they put the surveillance together. I suspect it happened on the front end, but we may have been caught a little bit flat-footed. But what's happening behind the scenes is we got to get arrest warrants. We got to verify. We got to hope he stops and grabs a Coke somewhere and throws a straw in the garbage can so we can grab some DNA. And once that comparison's made and validated, then, boy, it's time to move forward.
Or his napkin at the truck stop. Tracy, that's where I want you to jump in, because they're not just trying to figure out who Bryan is and whether Bryan's DNA matches the DNA found at the crime scene. They're also trying to find out cousin Dave, cousin Ethel, well, they don't think it's Ethel, and all the other potential family members that they have to exclude. So are they also sending out strike teams to follow all these other family members to collect their straw and their napkin to eliminate them as the actual match?
So that's a great question. Yes and no. I think, first and foremost, they probably were able to narrow it down to him rather quickly, in that, just to your point, they were able to exclude some of the folks that just weren't people who were capable of committing a crime like this. I am certain that the FBI resident agency that is closest to his hometown in Pennsylvania was probably notified and probably did do some surveillance on his family home prior to Kohberger getting to his family home. I'm almost certain that took place. Additionally, I think they also watched Kohberger as well and his activities. And I think from surveilling his activities, they were able to really focus in on the fact that he was a suspect, especially when, the lookout came out for the white Hyundai and he happened to have one.
Please remember to hit like and subscribe to support the channel, and definitely leave a comment letting us know what you think.